All right, good afternoon. Let me go ahead and call this work session of the mayor and council to order for October the 8th. And let me just remind everybody, I don't see too many. Yeah. I don't see very many visitors in here today, but I will remind you that at the end of the work session, we will have time for public comments today. With that, I will go ahead and start the agenda, and the first lucky participant presenter will be Bobby Elliott. A1, announcement of the final public meetings on the Forward Villa Rica Transportation Master Plan. Good afternoon, Bobby.
Mr. Mayor, good afternoon, members of council. As everybody knows, we've been working on the Transportation Master Plan for several months now. We're getting close to the finish line. The final report will be presented to the City Council on the November 10th regular meeting. But before we get to that finish line, we've got two public meetings scheduled, open house type public meetings. The first one is October 15th at Powell Park from 6 to 8. And then the second one is October 29th at the Public Library from 6 to 8 as well. Both of these meetings, we encourage the original stakeholders that participated in the study to show up at 5 if they have specific questions about the plan and what's going on. We have on the city's website, we have a link posted that will take you to all the materials, the current draft of the plan and all the data that goes with it. It's not only for viewing, but the public can do comments as well. That was posted on October 5th. So that being said, we encourage all the public, if you have questions about the Transportation Master Plan, to make it to one of the meetings. The Powell Park meeting will have emphasis on the west side of town, and the library meeting will have emphasis on the east side of town. Even though the notice on the website has got them flipped, we're going to fix that. So it makes more sense to have, if you're going to be on Powell Park, you need to be on this side. If you're going to be on the library, you need to be on that side. So that being said, we look forward to finishing this thing up and getting it presented to council on the 10th.
All right, so you said that the first one is on October the 15th.
Yes, sir.
From 6 to 8 p.m. at Powell Park.
Yes, sir.
And the second one?
It is October 29th from 6 to 8 at the library.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we got that out there clear. And on the website where the public can go, do you have some specific directions on how to get there, or is it on our front page?
Go to the homepage of the city's website. At the bottom is the top link at the bottom on what's happening now. It's the very first link. You click it and it'll take you right to everything.
Okay, that's good information. Do any council members have any questions for Bobby on this?
You said there's something that needs to be corrected first,
Yeah, it's the actual notice of the meetings.
and that'll be corrected, only because I don't want to send people there yet?
That'll be
till
corrected by tomorrow morning first
Okay.
thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Were there any surprises?
No, just disappointments. We know we've got major issues, and I think there's some, Tom, 51 or 52 projects identified. They also included a lot of the GDOT stuff that we wish they had not have spent time on, since they're not ours, or we're not in control of those. But a lot of good stuff, a lot of good data.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, thank you, Bobby.
Yes, sir.
We're going to move now to Community Development, tab B, and let me say up front that the first 5 items in this tab are zoning appeals that will have a public hearing, and that they will come before the City Council Tuesday for that public hearing and decisions by the council. Today, though, Chris Montesinos, Deputy Director of Community Development, would like you to brief us on each of these, and we'll see if council has any questions, but just give us a little briefing on each of these. You can take them one at a time, and we'll see if there's any questions one at a time. But we'll reserve the public hearing till Tuesday,
Well,
obviously.
thank you, Mayor and City Council. This project is a result of the recent adoption of the Villabrook zoning ordinance and the adoption of the official zoning map. As you recall, we had a number of objectors that filed appeals with the city. We were able to narrow those down to 5 individual property owners. We've done an evaluation based on the criteria that the city follows, or actually has applicants follow when they file for a rezoning, to ensure that what we were requiring of others, we were also requiring of ourselves. So we looked at consistency with the comprehensive plan. We looked at the impact of the zoning on the existing land use, the impacts that it would potentially have one way or the other on adjacent properties and other factors. All those are included in the analysis that's in the staff report on each of these individual properties. Just in summary, if I had to hit the highlights on each one, starting on Harold Road. Harold Road's property was surrounded by other O&I properties that were developed for single-family residential use. They were legally non-compliant with the zoning. When we made the adjustment to the zoning map, all the properties around there were zoned according to their current use. This property, however, was isolated, and they were the only one that actually appealed. But this property was in between 2 single-family residential properties and had nothing built on it. So there was really no cause for it to be zoned O&I. In addition, it didn't meet the minimum lot requirements to be considered under the zoning district.
Okay.
On that particular one, do you spell Harold H-E or H-A?
It's actually spelled H-E. We've
I thought it was.
corrected it online, but did not get it corrected in the staff report in time.
Okay, keeping in mind that we are going to take these up in a public hearing on Tuesday, I just want to ask if any council members have any questions for Chris before we move on to the next one.
Yes, I do.
All right, go ahead.
The property parcel ID number listed on the agenda here ends in 448, but isn't it 048? That was what was presented to planning and zoning.
Yes, sir, 048, that's correct. It's a typo in the cover letter.
And planning and zoning, when they heard this, it was general commercial to single-family agricultural, according to the minutes that I have.
Okay.
But on this brief, it's O&I to R1.
Yes, it was actually the property next door, which is the mental health facility. I can't remember what the name. Willowbrook, thank you. That one was actually zoned commercial. There was a property across the street, which is the senior housing. That was zoned commercial. In between was an undeveloped parcel that was zoned for a planned development that was never adopted along with a concept plan. And the 3 parcels next to Willowbrook were zoned office institutional. So the information on the appeal form is correct, that it was going from O&I under the old ordinance to R1, single-family residential.
Okay, so are you saying that's
I'm just
consistent
wondering,
then?
You know, it's the header on this thing says zoning appeal 03-20, parcel ID 0 Harold Road, CG, general commercial to AG, single-family agricultural. And then it goes on to say this appeal is in regard to city-initiated rezoning to keep the O&I. So
Okay,
I'm just, was
sorry,
P and Z, did they know what the correct rezoning was proposed, or is?
I'm
is there-
not following what you're talking about. Can you,
Look at the red, that's the minutes.
okay,
Look at the red header.
okay. So that's part of the
No, this is the minutes from P and Z,
Okay.
the meeting where they,
All right, I don't have a copy of those minutes from P and Z, and I'm actually not involved in the P and Z process, so I'm not sure how that was articulated to them.
if
Okay.
you want to take a look at it. I just want to make sure that P and Z in their recommendation and in our recommendation, we're talking about the right stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a typo or not, because if you actually read the text that's in the minutes, it speaks of the O and I zoning to the R1 zoning. So,
Then there's another typo in there on another appeal.
okay. To err is human.
Okay, well, at least make sure that if the minutes reflect a typo, we need to get that corrected. No, I wasn't talking to you. I'm looking at Bobby.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and I appreciate you pointing that out because it does appear to be inconsistent, but maybe it's just not, maybe it is a typo. Are there any other questions on this one? All right, let's go ahead, Chris, to number 2, B2.
Okay, B2 is Zero Industrial Boulevard. This is a property owned by Jeff Matthews. The property is located off Highway 61, south of the railroad, to the north and west of the Carroll County Fire Department station. Again, we looked at the two major factors in this were that the predominant land use, or development pattern rather, along 61 is commercial in nature. The industrial development is really not front and center on the highway. It's really off into the industrial parks and the surrounding areas. And number 2 was that the future land use map for this area did include a highway commercial component as a recommended zoning for the property. So given the fact that it was somewhat geographically isolated south of the railroad from the predominant industry developed areas of the city, and because of its exposure to Highway 61, the historic development pattern, and being right across from a street from multifamily housing development, we felt that the more appropriate zoning designation for this would be C2. Now, at the time, the initial zoning action on the property was to go from a general industrial to a agricultural zoning because it had been historically undeveloped and cleared. We came to a compromise that we would recommend the C2 zoning, or rather the I2 zoning, excuse me, which were consistent with the contiguous parcels, but in our reevaluation of our initial determination, felt that the C2 would in fact be more appropriate for that property.
Okay, where's the applicant at with regard to this zoning? Is that the agreement? Was it with the applicant?
It
Or
was
the appellant?
Well, initially, what we did was we changed our position from zoning it to AG to zoning it to I2. And at that time, the applicant wanted it to be zoned to commercial. And I said, well, we're gonna have to let the council vet that out because of some inconsistencies that we were not able to address administratively.
But it appears to me that that is now a staff recommendation, is C2.
Correct?
Okay. Council, do you have any questions?
I do, and I will not be at the hearing Tuesday, and that's why I want to get a couple of these answered today. I didn't have this attachment initially and did this one, I think about midnight last night, and it was the most confusing to me. So that's why I need to ask you just a couple questions. Because it sounded to me like you were saying, because it's away from the industrial and it's fronting 61, that commercial would be fitting.
Correct.
And that's what we were going to do, but then we changed that, and I know that's not exactly a question, but that's a question, just to explain that a little bit more. And also, out of I read all the other ones thoroughly. I mean, I read everybody's appeal and what they said and all. Is this the only one? I think I recall that P and Z had a different recommendation
This was the only one that.
to uphold the appeal?
Yes, correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a conflict between what P and Z decided. They want to uphold the appeal. Staff is recommending against the appeal.
No, let me restate that. P and Z was in favor of the applicant's appeal, to approve the appeal. Staff's recommendation was also the approval of the appeal. So to go back historically, we looked at properties that were undeveloped, and we were looking to downzone them back to agricultural, so that in the future, we would have some ability to have some leverage in the future development of the property in case there was a need to address public infrastructure or trails or what have you. In this case, we had to look at the future land use map in consideration of the recommendations. That's why initially it was going to go from general industrial to AG to neutralize the zoning. But because we were using the future land use map as consideration for how we did the administrative reviews on all the appeals, we had to apply the same principles to this one, and then went instead from AG to I2, because the adjacent properties were already I2 as well. But then when we went back and looked at it again a second time and said, but there are these other factors like the development pattern of the area, the adjacency, how it's disconnected from other industrial, how it's next to multifamily. Really, I2 is not the best place. And given with the extension of 61 coming in the future, we're going to have more need for commercial development than we are for industrial. We're looking at other areas of the city for industrial. So just to continue that zoning pattern in favor of the applicant's appeal.
Okay, so in this case, staff, P and Z, and the applicant are all in agreement.
Correct.
So Chris, if everyone's in agreement, then why couldn't it been handled administratively like the other appeals?
Because again, historically, it went from AG to I2. I2 would have been, as Tom and I have discussed, is not really a down zone from C2. It's more of an equivalent. But the applicant wanted the C2, and so basically it just went through the
Well,
the
essentially what
process.
happened is that we set a time frame for when we would administratively make these decisions. This was made after that time frame had passed, therefore that's why it's sitting here today. Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
let me just, I've gotten a couple of notes here. Let me remind everyone to turn off your microphones when you're not speaking, because they're very sensitive and it's actually speaking over other people for those who are watching at home. We're not noticing it so much in the room, but it's going on over the video. All right, Chris, let's move on to number 3, B3.
Number 3 is 0 Sugar Hill Street. This is what we classically call zoning creep. It's where basically you have an existing single-family residential neighborhood, and over time, either through mistakes or through intention, you start getting the adjacent zoning districts kind of creeping in and taking over. From the standpoint of the department, we would prefer to avoid introducing non-compatible zoning classifications, such as this case, the applicant's property was zoned light industrial, and was not compliant with the equivalent of under the new zoning. As well, there was some there are some issues with the property that we've been trying to work out with the property owner. But the bottom line was that the future land use map identified the area as single-family residential, and we felt due to the size and proximity to other single-family residential homes that would be the best zoning district for that property.
Okay, so in this particular situation, the applicant has an L1 or a light industrial,
Yes.
or had, well, but they want to maintain that zoning, is that correct?
Yes, they'd like to maintain a industrial zone.
And staff's recommendation, and the process is that it go R2, residential.
Correct.
Therefore, you would be requesting a denial of the appeal here. All right, council, does anybody have any questions?
This is another one where P and Z, when they looked at it, it was classified GI, general industrial, not light industrial.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I don't know which is which, but
You're correct. General industrial in the old zoning district is the same as our I2 in our new zoning district. Another,
so where's LI?
LI is kind of like the I1 under the new zoning. So you are correct. It was general industrial, not light industrial.
Is that important? Is there, does it make a big difference from general to light?
No, it does not. It really is just a matter of the intensity of the use that's on the property. A GI or an I2 would be your higher intensity uses, like a concrete factory, for example, or a large distribution center versus like a mechanic shop or like a Serve Pro or something like that that's a little more light industrial / commercial. One other point that's important to bring up is that the minimum lot size on I2, which is the equivalent to the GI, is 5 acres, and this is nowhere near even a quarter of an acre, so it just would not be compliant with the current zoning.
That comes into play on about 3 of them, I believe. The minimum lot size
Yes.
does not meet what the zoning that they want in the
Correct.
appeal.
And I think that's important to point out in your presentation as well. All right, any other questions from council?
Just that, and you may think I'm kidding, but I'm not sure that we might not need a cheat sheet now and then. With all the changes, LI, this, all the letters, and, well, this is what it used to be, but this is what it is now. And that might come in handy at
I'll
some
get that
time.
for you, actually. I have that.
Great, thank you. No
He has
rush.
that because he needs that. That's what's happening here.
It's all there.
If you need it, you can
All right,
imagine, right?
if there are no other questions, let's move on to 4, Chris.
Okay, 1309 West Bankhead Highway and also 1401 West Bankhead Highway. These are 2 neighboring properties.
Okay,
They're both existing single-family residential homes. They have never been utilized for a commercial purpose. They are not on public sewer. And most importantly, not only have they not applied for any commercial permits or business licenses, but the lot size under C2 would not accommodate this type of development. So we don't want to zone something to something that would make it then legally non-conforming from the standpoint of setbacks and being able to be utilized if it went vacant for a period of 1 year or greater.
Based on that, Chris, if it wouldn't even meet the lot size, but we zoned it that, if then somebody wanted to develop it based on that, would it even be allowed? Because the lot size would,
No.
okay, all right.
all right. Council, does anybody have any questions?
Oh, you know what? I did. I had written a note, and it I wrote it beside we're on number 4, aren't we?
And 5.
Okay. I wrote it next to 5, but it actually applies to several of them. In the staff notes, it says the zoning does not devalue the property. And the reason I'm asking this question is I noticed in a number of the appeals, if it wasn't said outright, it was implied that they were concerned that the value of the property, it wouldn't be worth as much. But I noticed in this particular case, the note said it does not devalue the property. Could you explain why it doesn't devalue the
Yes.
property for the appellant?
Both of the appellants indicated that they felt that their property would be worth more if it was zoned for commercial use. The adjacent properties had been purchased by the First Baptist Church, and that they felt that they could get a higher price for the property if the church decided to buy the property. As I've explained to both of those applicants, that a church use is not a permissible use under our commercial middle density zoning, or C2 zoning, and that the church wouldn't necessarily find that more appealing to them to want to acquire the property. And actually, as we were recommending it be zoned to AG, which is single-family residential 1 acre lots, which is what they are, that the church could operate in that zoning district, and therefore those properties would actually become more appealing for acquisition if the church was determined to go in that direction. Secondly, neither property has been taxed as a commercial property by Carroll County, and there was really nothing to substantiate maintaining the general commercial zoning in the future.
You think it was zoned that way just because it fronted 78?
I can't even speculate what happened in the past
Don't worry about it.
before the rapture.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? All right, I would just say, being in the real estate business, that I'd be very careful about deciding what would and would not impact property values, because that is not a science.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should be in the business of determining by opinion what we think will or will not devalue a piece of property, because all properties are unique in some way. Okay, there are no other questions. Let's move on to B6, establishment of the Villa Rica Downtown Entertainment District. Mr. Montesinos, you are still
Thank you.
there.
I am still here.
Go.
And you guys are too. Great. This is a
Excellent.
very interesting project. This was actually started back in February, before the coronavirus pandemic. And the way that it ties in after being revived once we came back off our COVID leave, this was originally initiated with discussions with downtown business owners. We met back in February. There were probably 5 or 6 business owners downtown. We met over at the Uncorked. We've had a number of discussions with Main Street, with at least 1 or 2 of our city council members related to this, about how, what could we do at the time, even pre-COVID, to help our businesses out. And the result of that was the creation of the Downtown Entertainment District, which is essentially like Carrollton has, or some of the other jurisdictions here in Metro Atlanta. It allows you to designate a specific area that would be open for the transfer of open container, as long as they were locally purchased at one of the vendors within the district. In the modern context, our downtown businesses probably would say that they were doing better in February than they are doing now, certainly. In trying to encourage social distancing, and also to maximize the capacity of indoor seating and service areas, that this downtown entertainment district really does more to encourage the adherence to the CDC guidelines, as well as to promote economic development in the downtown businesses, especially related to the restaurants and the places that serve alcoholic beverages.
Okay, when this has been going on for a while, and that you've already said that, but part of this was that we would make this Temple Street one way, and that we would come up with a new name for Temple Street. But I don't see that in here, Bobby. Is that going to be brought separately? Because it needs to be part of this initiative.
Mr. Mayor, that's going to be brought saving contract I've got, and I call that area the Main Street Plaza area. It's included in our paving. I've included all the striping to make it one way, change the striping going east to west being one way. I'll have to bring that separate because I wasn't prepared to go ahead and let mayor and council adopt that now before I get the paving set up and scheduled up, because it's still gonna be, the parking's gonna be in conflict with going that one way, going east to west, with the striping being the other way.
Okay.
So that will be brought back.
I just want to know that that is being handled and that is going to be part of.
Yes, sir, I got it included.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's not in this piece, and so I wanted to see if
Right.
it was coming
It
separately.
will come, it'll probably come either in the November meeting or the December meeting, because I don't think our paving's gonna be far enough along to get to that by then, so.
Okay, that's fine. Just update us then.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure I could bring that as close to fruition together, those two at the same time as possible, to make sure it doesn't mess people up figuring out, well, this is one way now, well, I can't, I can't park, that kind of thing.
Okay, I understand. All right, thank you. And Chris, I apologize for getting off just a little bit there, but these two go hand in hand to me.
I
So
understand.
council, does anybody have any questions for Chris?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chart on here. It shows yellow except for the mill. The mill's blue. But all this hasn't been approved yet, so how come it's not all in yellow? What's the difference?
The difference is that the mill property, which is a city-owned property, which the city has the liability for, we wanted to make the mill accessible to the district by the permission of the city council only. So you've got the by right district, and then you've got an expansion district, which includes the mill with the permission of city council. I
On a
just wanna-
case-by-case basis?
Correct.
Okay.
yes. And I want to make one point to your comment, Mr. Mayor, which is that this ordinance is an amendment to the alcohol ordinance. And so to include things about one-ways and streets and pluses and things, it really
Yes, sir.
doesn't really fit in.
I understand, but it goes hand in hand in the larger picture
Yes,
for us.
yes.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? We are not,
I
go ahead.
do, and I wanted to thank you for bringing it up, even though it was unrelated, because I had not heard the update on exactly how all that would play in with the road, so I just appreciated the update. Chris, okay, so we know the open container allowed in this area. Technically, right now, we have the parklets, okay, the parklets for Uncorked, Los Cowboys. So they may take margarita out to the little parklet. That's the closest thing we have to sidewalk dining, which we don't have yet. If someone were actually standing on a sidewalk right now, technically they would be illegal with a margarita or something. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, so this kind of opens that up to further sidewalk dining or walking to and from. I mean, I know we're not, if they walk across the sidewalk to the parklet, but I just wanted to make that clear that right now, if somebody were to step outside the door of any of these locations, technically, that's illegal.
Yes.
Okay.
My brain's pumping, because earlier in the year, we did an order that allowed the outside dining, that also allowed, and I can't remember what date we set that to expire, so I was trying to be real careful that it may not be, because there may be something, but anyway, this would change
I'm not looking
that.
for us to go get anybody.
at-
My point, really, the whole reason I said that was to see how this will open things up to what we would, really just even leisurely stuff just outside the door of some of these restaurants.
Are there any other questions for Chris? Okay, if there are no other questions, we will not be placing this on the consent agenda, because there will be an objection, I promise. So let me just move on to B7, presentation of the LCI proposal, evaluations and recommendations for the selection of a consultant for the Villa Rica Livable Centers Initiative study. Go ahead, Chris.
This is a project I am just absolutely thrilled to bring to the city of Villa Rica, which I've been going on for about 2 years on. We put the RFP out through the Atlanta Regional Commission, Georgia Planning Association, and through the city's website, as well as doing targeted solicitations to a number of vendors. We received 9 proposals from some extremely well credentialed and qualified firms. We did an evaluation of the proposals based on a number of factors which are outlined in the scoring criteria which have been provided to you. There have been a number of firms that stuck out a little more than others. But just to let you know that this is the current result. We set up interviews with the top 3 firms and met with one yesterday and have 2 interviews tomorrow. So we're still very much engaged in the process, and we'll have an affirmative recommendation for the mayor and city council at the next council meeting.
All right, council, does anyone have any questions? All right, so the motion here would be to approve the recommendation of the City LCI Evaluation Committee, which is Barber, Elliott, Montesinos, and Johnson, to select the highest ranking consultant based on the scoring criteria included in the LCI study, RFP, and other relevant factors. Do you intend to bring that back before that occurs? Do you need this motion at this time? Or is this more?
You're gonna bring the actual recommendation Tuesday?
Yes, I'm going to bring the recommendation, the final recommendation on Tuesday.
Okay, well, then I'm gonna hold off on this one as well.
Correct.
So far, we still do not have anything for the consent agenda. All right, gentlemen, or ladies and gentlemen, does anybody have any questions for Chris before I move on?
Just that I know we don't.
Hold on, Mr. Young?
This will tie into the Renaissance strategic plan that we have also, kind of?
Yes, sir. Yes, it will. It's a combination of the Renaissance plan, the comprehensive plan, the Gold Nugget Trail plan. I mean, every plan we've done, even back to the one that Walton did last year for the Fullerville and the Old Town Village area. It ties in all these. It's not centered on downtown like the Renaissance plan was. It extends all the way out to Fullerville, out to Pumpkin Town Road, to I-20. I mean, it's a much larger, more comprehensive plan for the central core of the city.
Right. We're excited about this. Ms. McPherson?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up, since you'll be doing something on Tuesday, I try to always imagine what it's like to be sitting out there as the audience or listening on the video, and we say LCI and we use all these different letters, and just that when we maybe get the general meeting, maybe a little bit more explanation, because this is a really cool thing that we have and that's coming and what it can do, and I just want people to know a little bit more about it. I'm sure they'll write something about it in the paper too, and they have in the past, but
Yes,
Yeah,
just
they
so
did a
people.
pretty good write-up in the paper a few weeks ago. I
They
thought
did,
they did a great job.
yes.
And they had Chris assisting there. Okay, any other questions? All right, let's move on to B8, Dallas Road Abandonment and Sale.
All right, I think I've got one for the consent agenda here.
Let's see.
This was a strip of right-of-way. It's only about, more or less about, I'd say maybe 200 feet long. It's an old road that probably dates back to the founding of the town. It serves no public purpose. It actually serves as a traffic lane in the middle of a parking lot for the First Methodist Church downtown.
Presbyterian Church, that's
Okay,
right.
thank
It's
you.
just down here.
Yes. Doing the research on it, there are no public utilities under the roadway. It's about the width of a single lane road. The history behind it was that the church approached the city to acquire it. The city had an appraisal done. The applicant said they would get their own appraisal, changed their minds, went ahead and said they would accept the city's appraisal. And so there we are at this point with the recommendation to abandon and sell the property.
Okay, is everyone familiar with where this particular road is?
I am
I
because
am
of the
now.
map.
I didn't know it existed before this.
Me
Okay, and so what has essentially happened is the city got an appraisal on it. It was $8,000, and we are asking tonight, the staff is asking for permission to sell this property. Are there any other questions?
You know, which side of the road, is that the church on the,
Church is on the left.
Parking lot's on the right. It's just a little strip right in the middle.
I mean, I thought it was part of their parking lot.
Yeah.
I've walked on it and I've driven down it, never realized it was a separate road.
So that's a little shopping area across the street from them? I'm looking
Oh,
at
no,
your-
no, no.
The railroad tracks.
You gotta go a little further down. It's residential and then a church.
I'm sitting here looking at the map, showing up.
That's their parking.
This is Main Street and this is the railroad tracks.
That's our Oh, okay. sidewalk
the railroad tracks over here.
This is the
Okay.
church.
And then this is the church. You'd never know.
It's through the middle of the church parking
All right,
lot.
is there any objections to placing this on the consent agenda?
None.
All right, consent agenda item number 1.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on to B9, temporary road closure request for Walton Communities. Mr. Elliott. Thank you, Chris.
Mayor, we've got a request from the Walton Communities. It's the new Walton Trail project that's with the Housing Authority rebuilt across from the hospital. We, the Old Town Road goes across, comes up by the hospital, and it goes across 61 heading west.
Yes, sir.
They have requested temporary closure of that street on the west side from Walnut Drive down to 61, that just little short section. She's trying to get,
So,
here it is, Mayor.
But it's Walnut Drive. All right, go ahead.
No, sir. If you look at the screen right there, you see where Walnut Drive is to the far left, and it circles around all the way. No, don't blow it up so much. Back it up some. Yeah, show the whole thing. Back it on up.
Bobby, grab that handheld and walk up here for me. Hand Bobby the handheld mic. Let him walk up here and show us. Because I thought this was Walnut Drive, so. Okay.
Mayor, Walnut Drive starts here. This is Old Stone Road. 61 is here.
Okay.
Walnut starts here and goes around and comes back in over here.
Right.
What they want to do is,
Pull that mic up.
they want to close from here to here temporarily. Because the work on this pond right here and these are large storm pipes they're putting in here. They can't keep this roadway open and do this construction.
Okay.
And they're requested 180 days. It's not going to take near that much, but I wanted to be safe with it. As soon as this gets done,
We'll open it back.
open back up. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Is everybody familiar with where that is? Okay. Largely, it's a necessary part of what we're doing over there anyway. So, does anybody have any questions for Bobby?
Mr. Mayor, we are really excited about this project.
Yes, sir.
It's going to really transform that area.
That area.
Walton has done a really good job there, and it's one of the best designed set of construction drawings that I've ever reviewed in my lifetime. So, that being said, I hope
Yeah,
I'm
no, I
not.
appreciate it, and there's a lot of reason for us to be happy with this. I mean, things that I might not be happy with, what I do know about what's happening there causes me to.
Yes, sir.
Actually, the council did a good job, because we toured the one up in Marietta and insisted they
Yes, sir.
come with that.
Walton so far has really showed their prowess on design and what they're planning on doing, so.
Okay, any other questions for Bobby?
The proposed guardrail that's shown on that document will be in place before they open the road back up?
Yes, sir.
All right. There are no other questions. I will place this item on the consent agenda as the second item for our consent agenda.
No
All right,
objection.
let's move on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bobby. Let's move on to Human Resources, tab C. Ms. Stephanie Rooks, item number 1 is change in payroll provider.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We brought this to you originally in August of this year, and you asked for more information, more demos, things of that nature. Well, we have done that. You have all of the contracts that you've requested. These are also contracts that Mr. Mecklin and Paycom's legal department have come to agreement on. Again, this is a integrated payroll system along with learning management and performance management, benefits administration, and recruiting. So we are asking that you review this and allow us to finally go ahead with Paycom. It will save us a lot of time, a lot of effort, and reduce the chance of error, because it is actually totally effective dated, which just for this budget, it's taken Shannon and I a good over 4 days to write up every PAR for every change. And then we have to put 2 different amounts in the system, because you pay them, the way the pay periods fall, you pay them one amount for the 28th through the 30th, and you pay them another amount from the 1st to the 10th. So we are having to calculate that and do all that. With Paycom, we can upload a spreadsheet and it'll do it for us.
Okay, so the setup, the initial first year is $56,098.
Correct. That
And then-
includes implementation fees.
And then each year, and the one-time fees, and then each year thereafter is $50,198. Is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
Does it have any escalation in it, and how long is the agreement?
I don't remember how long the agreement is. It does not.
David, have you reviewed this?
I have reviewed it, and there is a provision in here that we can terminate it at any time.
Okay, I wasn't really thinking about that. I'm concerned with escalating cost, and I wanted to know that we're not looking at.
What is the term of the agreement? How long is it good for?
Until we terminate it.
Yeah, it
Until
just
we.
says that the agreement shall continue
The
in full.
pricing, they have actually given us a document at one point that, saying that their fees would not go up.
Okay, that'd be a great document to know that we have. So, David, let's make sure we have that, because
Okay.
that's important, and that's the biggest question I have. I've looked at these, and the council's been familiar with it from our review before, back in August.
Right.
So this is not new to us, but we want to make sure that, yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that typically, whenever you have a contract that's terminable at will, if the pricing is a concern to you, you just stop it.
Yeah, I understand that, but in a situation like this, when we're moving our systems into this, we are so reliant on this comprehensive system. You can find yourself in a situation where they don't care if you're willing to walk away, because guess what? It's very difficult and costly for you to do that. So you have to make the decision to stay. So I'd like to see the document, and I appreciate that. Council, does anybody have any questions?
Mayor, I just mentioned also that almost always they also have those upfront costs that they're not gonna charge the second year. So if you change every year, you keep paying the upfront cost over and over again.
Right, and here there's about $6,000 of those costs. Anybody else?
This is the all comprehensive, everything's in, evaluation, training, tracking, all that. And I only had one question, didn't I? Did that happen? Did the city manager look at this and feels good about it?
We demoed it with the sales guy.
Okay, well, I knew you had to use it with your department heads, they'll use it with everybody else.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? All right, subject to David, making sure that that document exists, I would place this on the consent agenda so that we can move forward with it. Just let us know that you have that, David, or that you don't, or let us know that you don't, okay? Because we'll be looking for something. All right,
If
no
I
objection?
can-
Yes, ma'am?
If I can provide the document to you, can you wait till Monday? Because my daughter had a baby yesterday and I'm.
Oh, well,
about to go to the
congratulations.
hospital.
You were showing the picture around earlier.
Right.
Clarify for me again what you'd like me to do?
To produce the document on Monday.
But I still can place this on the consent agenda.
Yes.
If you would just send it to David and David can send it to us.
Okay.
That way I know that David has it and we have confidence in that piece.
All right.
Okay, so this item will go on the consent agenda. Let's move on to the 2021 benefit premiums. Ms. Rooks.
Okay, we have reviewed all of the plan changes and we have come up with new premiums for the self-funded health plan that we believe will cover our expenses. You have them next to you, or in your packet. There are 4 different tiers within 4 tiers. So we have single, we have employee plus spouse, employee plus child, and family. within each of the 4 tiers, being whether you participate in the wellness plan and you don't smoke, or you don't participate in the wellness plan and do smoke. You don't participate in anything and do smoke. Those are the highest premiums. And then there's the wellness plan without smoking.
What is the percentage column showing up in there, this rate?
Which one?
There's only one column called rate and it's colored in? Yeah, green column.
That is the percentage of the total cost of the premium that the employee pays.
It looks like that, overall, this is roughly a 3%, right about
I
3%
believe it's
increase
3.4.
across, is it closer to 4?
3.4.
3.4, yeah, across the board. What was our increase last year, do you remember?
Wendell, do you remember? Wasn't it 2?
It was under 3 last year, this year, we're at about 3.4. Okay, yeah, that, all right, we get that differently. All right, council, any questions?
Just mention, draw your attention to what insurance does cost, and just keep that in mind. That's a major cost not only for government, but for businesses and everything too. Look at what people pay for health care, and imagine some years back, we gotta see some changes in the future on that. I have neighbors that can barely afford their insurance. This is tough, isn't it?
Okay, if there are no objections, I'll place this on the consent agenda as our 4th item.
No objection.
And let's move on to plan document changes.
Okay, we would like to present to you a plan document change, actually 2, in the co-pays for the emergency room and the wellness urgent cares. We want to increase the copay that is required to visit an emergency room to $500 from $350. If you are admitted during this emergency room visit, that copay is waived. Okay, so you don't have to pay it if you're admitted. We'd also like to lower the copay for urgent care from $50 to $25, effective in January.
Okay. Council, any questions?
Yes, definitely.
Go
I have a
ahead.
giant star by this one. And what I want to know is this, were the employees are they included and talked about with this? Because this is what I'm thinking. Your kid slides off something, cracks their head open, $500 to go to the ER. I know what it is to be on a weekend. Now, maybe the Urgent Center, I don't know how much they carry because I've been in those too. I can remember even myself one time going, can I wait till Monday to go to the doctor? How bad is this really? And I called a nurse friend and said, can I hold off till Monday? So I'm trying to visualize our employees, their kids, their family members, $500 to go to the ER. So what I'm wondering is, have they been included in it? Have we looked at, is there something else we could adjust somewhere else where you pay a little bit more on something else so that you don't get hit with this major hit? That just hit me as a bunch of money for a family.
It seems to me that they're trying to make people use the urgent care.
Is your mic on?
Yep, it's.
Pull it a
just
little
not-
closer,
Just not
please.
close enough.
Yeah, just
Trey.
hold off for just a second. I got more sign language going on today. All right, go ahead.
I understand you're trying to encourage people to use urgent care facilities.
And their
For-
primary care
for-
physicians.
Scrapes and bumps and things you're not certain of. Are there sufficient urgent care around the city that we don't have any worry about them getting to a place? I mean,
Yes.
I know Tanner is centrally located, but the
That's-
urgent cares are
There's the
located into
hospital,
where they can
and
get to them?
then there's Tanner Urgent Care, which is over by Mirror Lake,
Uh-huh.
by Publix. There are other urgent cares that aren't affiliated with Tanner. I don't know about the availability within Villa Rica. I know about the availability within Carrollton,
One
which
in-
there are several.
One in front of Home Depot, they're pretty
Right.
good on their
And
hours. I've
Peachtree,
been there.
yes,
Yeah,
they're very
Peachtree.
good. They are
All
actually
right, let's
allied
get
with.
one person talking at a time.
Peachtree is actually part of the Emory system. So, and that is one of the people we don't have problems with.
Pete's Tree is part of the Emory system, and we don't have problems with them. Are those the only two facilities in Villarica, the one over by Mirror Lake and the one over by the Home Depot?
They're the only two that I'm aware of.
Well, I mean, I guess probably what we're getting at is Councilwoman McPherson's point is well taken, that
Right.
if your kid, and we think about our kids, I think, when we think about this kind of stuff, but they fall and they crack their head or, that is an emergency, certainly to me. I don't know if that's handled at urgent care. And to
Urgent
have to
care
go and pay $500, the whole idea of this is to keep people from going for bumps and scrapes
Right.
to the ER, because the cost is exponentially higher, and since we're paying the cost, we want to be aware of
Right.
that. But there are emergencies that are not likely to result in a hospitalization, in an admission to the hospital. And I would want to know that, Wendell, is there any way to distinguish between those two types of visits to the ER, or no?
It's hard.
I would hand him that microphone. He's going to help with these couple of items. It doesn't, just get to a mic.
I think the intent is understood, is that we want to try to eliminate hospital usage when we can go to urgent care. A $500 copay for emergency room copays is very common throughout most insurance plans. You're looking at a difference of a cost to the city of in excess of $2,000 to $3,000 for emergency room visit, where the employee pays the $500 versus about a $700 urgent care cost. So in the discussions we had, we were just trying to find a way, and we had some non-urgent care utilization of hospitals in the past that cost the city a lot more, and we just wanted to make it a better choice for the employees to consider, instead of just jumping in the car and immediately going over here to Tanner or any other hospital, to try to find an urgent care facility instead. And certainly, if you go to an urgent care facility and they say they can't treat you, you'll go straight to a hospital, and I think that is perfectly normal. So, and I have children too, 2 daughters, and we've had ambulance rides and stitches and things, from cheerleading and broken bones, and we understand. I think most people, can differentiate between a hospital, but I think what we were trying to do is look at an appropriate structure, and to really reduce urgent care down to 25 is below standard. As you know, you have a $0 copay for specialty or primary care, really low dollars for. So we were just trying to right size those to drive that behavior better.
Yes, sir.
This isn't the first time we've done this, and we didn't put it in the cover sheet, but I think, and y'all have to help me with the numbers, but we've already gone 250 to 350, right?
Yes.
Is
Correct.
Sarah here? Doesn't that sound right? And then how about urgent care? Was it 75 that we went to 50 or 100?
I think it was 100, and then we went to 50.
So we've been doing this, since we started this, and we are trying to impact behavior.
Well, is it
Right.
working?
Well, I get that,
Not
but
as
are we,
much as,
Well, hold on.
not as much as we want it to,
But you
right?
you
Which
still
is
think
why
this
we're
is,
bringing it back.
you still think this is the right strategy?
Well, it may be that we've got to figure out more than one differentiation between being admitted and not being admitted, which is like all or nothing with the 500.
Well, I think that's my
Like
question.
in the case, Wendell, what does the plan document say if we go to urgent care and they send us to the hospital and we go into ER?
It doesn't speak to that.
Do we
Plan
need to,
document doesn't.
do we need to have language in there about that? Is that a
Maybe
different
refer to the
cost than the
ER.
500? Because, basically, we got the behavior we wanted. If they go to urgent care and they say, no, go to ER, does that happen?
It does, it certainly does.
So I would think in that case, the 500 wouldn't apply.
Well, typically what they do then is the urgent care doesn't charge the patient because they can't triage that patient into their system.
But what are we gonna charge on the copay is the question.
Well, if you go to the hospital and it's non-admitted, it would be 500.
Well, the urgent
Well,
care is not open
hold
24
on,
hours.
Did you have a question? I'm trying to keep it in some kind of order. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that's all right. Okay, so I get that we're trying to change behavior. My question is, are we communicating with all our employees about what we're trying to do? Or are we administratively trying to change it without communicating? Because we just, the rest of the governing body just instituted something where there is a reward, in a sense, for employees if we save money with end-of-year bonus, if there's money there that's saved in the healthcare program. So there could be incentive, am I echoing?
You're good.
Okay, there could be incentive to want to save money, but it just hits me that $500 for a family, I mean, that was just my initial thought. I know that is a chunk of change for a lot of families, and I just wanted to know, were the employees included in on any of this discussion about why this is occurring, why we need to do this, or should we do it differently? That's all.
I would like, Danny, did you have something?
Well, what I was gonna say is that urgent care is not open all night, so what happens, after urgent care closes, and your kid gets sick, and you gotta take him somewhere, he's running 105, 104. You're gonna have to go to the emergency room, where else can you go?
I would like us to, I'd like
You
us to.
do have a 24-hour nurse line with your plan that allows them to call before they go and to make this. I know for me, it seemed like my daughter always ran her temperature Sunday night at 9 o'clock. And what do you do at Sunday night at 9 o'clock? So you do have a 24-hour nurse line that helps people make those decisions, and they're very qualified in telling you if it's something you should consider an emergency or whether you should stay home and give Advil and wait till you go to your primary care doctor on Monday morning.
All right, let me, as a parent, I'm just gonna say what we all probably know, which is that we don't think a whole lot about any of this until something happens. And at that moment, we make a decision about how to take care of our kid. That's what we do. I would rather us not do this yet until we can find some way to know that this actually has an impact. Because I'm gonna tell you, there's not gonna be a lot of difference today. If we were to send out a note to all the employees, they're gonna set it to the side. I would do the same thing. I don't think about it until the moment it happens. I would like us to look at how to differentiate between true emergencies where you can resolve it at urgent care or at your doctor's office, your primary care physician. That's what we're trying to change the behavior of. It's not that emergency that a person knows that this is a serious emergency, my kid's pouring blood or whatever. I think we can look at this better. I mean, that's part of why we're partially self-funded, is so that we can have a lot of flexibility. I'd like us to look at it a little closer. Does anybody else have any questions? Does anybody?
I will just say to Councilman Carter's point, if there's something that we can do about the time of admission or something, if it's after 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. or on a weekend or something like that, maybe, the ER copay isn't as high, because by those hours, most urgent cares are closed.
It
by
becomes
then.
an administrative, there's no way that we can administer a hospital admittance or an urgent care admittance based on time and then try to, because we're always going to be in the rears in that scenario, right? Because they're going to bill regardless.
Okay.
We could reimburse it, though.
You sure could. But, it would require your staff to,
To look
put
at it.
Put in a structure and take the time to administer that.
Talk to me just a little bit about the timing here, because are we looking at an enrollment period? Do we have to do this? Are we right up against the line?
Right.
Pretty much up against the line.
Okay.
We can bring back something on Tuesday, though.
Okay. I don't mind seeing something on Tuesday, but I don't want to go with this right now. So,
One,
Mr. Carter, Mr. Carter.
one other point, maybe if we required them to call this hotline you're talking about and have an agreement, they tell us it is an emergency, we can go to the emergency room, then we don't charge them a higher fee.
And I think that's what Tom's talking about in terms
Well,
of internally.
The hospital's not gonna know that, but we could reimburse.
Well, that's what I'm talking about with the reimbursement
Well,
after the fact.
How do you feel about the reduction in the urgent care?
I like that.
Well, I have no issue with that. I have no issue with that.
Thanks,
I just
guys.
don't know that urgent care is being used enough. I think that the primary use is the emergency room, and that's why we're having the discussion. I don't think we're having an issue over at urgent care.
Okay, I just wanted to
But
make sure.
just wait and then come back on Tuesday, and if you want, you know, if you come up with something for the emergency room as well as this reduction, or just this reduction, we're happy to look at that.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would just say that the reduction in the urgent care, it's dirt cheap. So while the 500 may be standard, and so we're going with that maybe because it's standard, I'd venture to guess that 25 is not standard for urgent care with most insurance.
Yeah, he said it was below.
Yeah.
It's
So-
well below. And that was the whole intent was, as Tom said earlier, was to try to modify behavior. And, you know, we all kind of speak with our wallet, and so the intent was to make you think before you went to the hospital, because it's $500. Do you really want to spend $500 when you've got a $25 option?
No, some of us stay home and suffer and try to figure it. I mean, seriously, I'm just trying to imagine people with their kids.
Well, and we also have the nurse hotline, and I believe we're adding telemedicine. So you have other outlets now while you're at home to help you make those decisions, so you're not alone. So that was kind of the thought process.
If that's all clear with the employees, and I just want to know that they're included in on it, and that their views and their thinking on it, because they are going to be impacted by it.
Well, we do, you know, we have an open enrollment process where we invite the employees to come in and have education, and we do our very, very best to educate employees. While they might put that piece of paper aside, they certainly have the chance to come in and learn and understand and get the resources to make good decisions. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to, oh, yes, sir. Is your mic on?
It's on. Okay, I use urgent care over at Mirror Lake. I don't want to go to the emergency room because when you get to the emergency rooms, you're there for hours and hours. No matter what's done to you, you're stuck for half a night. So I always use urgent care at Mirror Lake, and they're real efficient in moving you in and out. So I think if we lower the premium, reduce that amount, that'll encourage them to try to use urgent care. And if they realize, we put out the word, keep in mind how much time you got to spend at the emergency room if you go there, it would help.
And what else you might catch.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move on to item 4, health benefit changes, third-party administrator.
Okay, as you know, right now, our third-party administrator is HealthScope. We are looking at dropping HealthScope, dropping AIM, dropping ClaimDoc to move to Allied Health as our TPA. The nice thing about Allied is that they can do all of the claims administration,
Pre-certification process.
pre-certifications, and the billing issues that we have. They'll handle that all in-house. And usually their balance bills are settled within 90 days instead of 2 years.
Okay, well, that sounds like a benefit all by itself. Council, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I don't see, it says the funding source is general fund, but there's no cost associated with this. What is the cost?
It's all part of the renewal package, so it's about the same as what you have now. If you had 3 vendors and consolidated to one, and this particular vendor has expanded capabilities, so it's all built into that 3% increase.
So this is the administration that is part of the healthcare plan. When we look at it, we see how much of it's administrative cost. Sarah points it out to us. And you all, Tom and Sarah and HR, have looked at this, and this is part of your recommendation as well. David, you? All right, go ahead, Tom.
All right, so let's say that the plan is $2 million a year. About Sarah, help me, almost 600,000 of it's admin?
Yeah, 550.
Right, and so we're talking about, what, was it $15 a month? Difference between HealthScope, AIM, and ClaimDoc and Allied?
Yeah.
So it's more per employee per month for the admin piece. But what we've told Wendell is that the current configuration for all of its benefits, saving money and giving us more control and more information and all the blah, 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 has this one significant drawback, which is in certain situations with certain employees with certain providers, we get into this awful balanced billing situation where we can't negotiate a settlement, and the internal billing mechanism of the hospital presents itself to the employee as a collection agency, even though they're not. And they text and call and all that kind of stuff, and it's just a hassle. And so what we said to Wendell was, look, this is the worst part of this whole thing that we're doing here is this balanced billing deal and collections and aggravating, even though it may be, 12 people out of the whole place, it's still, 12 people that are aggravated, whether it's the employee or the spouse or the dependent. It doesn't matter who it is, it's all, aggravating the employee at the end of the day. This is the solution. Is it gonna be more expensive? Yes. Is it a deal breaker? Absolutely not. And in terms of the satisfaction of the plan, it's the only option we have. We don't see another way to make this balanced billing problem go away except this.
Well, Stephanie has pointed out that that they will process these claims quicker, but how do we know that they will be better managed and that it will resolve the problem you're talking about? Because that has been the biggest complaint that I get, and I hear it regularly.
Because he's already using them.
Okay,
with other
so
clients.
experience is why we're giving this a try. And our expectation is that it will resolve this larger problem. Okay, and we had talked about this, Stephanie and I already. Council, does anybody have any other questions?
So this will reduce the workload burden on city employees because somebody else will handle the grief or there won't be any grief.
It consolidates 3 touch points for an employee into one, and it resolves things faster and more effectively. Yes, sir.
All right, any other questions? If there are no objections, I'm gonna add this as a consent C5.
No objection.
All right, let's move on to another great one. Change in Pharmacy Assistance Program. You guys are getting the whole show today.
Wendell's gonna do this one.
All right, very
yes.
good. Step up to the mic.
Thank you very much. So we currently have in place a pharmacy management company. They're your regular old, what we call a PBM. And they're the ones responsible for taking the prescriptions from your doctors and approving them. They have the internal pharmacies, they have the internal doctors, and they're the ones that approve or decline pharmacy. They're your current vendor. What we do is we take that data and send it out and try to find copay assistance and other programs that reduce the cost to your employees and also provide mail order much more effectively. And so currently we're using a vendor up in Boston. We'd like to use this company here in Georgia. I think that having a Georgia company that can show up on site, actually talk and meet with your employees, that has a 678 area code instead of a 410 area code is important. And also because they also require personal household income data and those types of things as far as the questionnaires we have to turn. And so I think having a local representation on that's better than having an out-of-town company do that.
All right, council, does anyone have any questions?
I think Mayor, the only question I had was, this is when people want assistance with paying the copay for a medication.
For the specialty and for.
No, I'm getting a yes and I'm getting a no nod.
We
Y'all talk
can't
to one
hear.
another and tell me which to.
It's 2 programs. So brand maintenance medications. This is the International Pharmacy Program where we send this to an international pharmacy and they mail the medications to your home on a 90-day mail order. So it's that. So instead of paying $471 in the U.S. for Crestor, it's $6. And so the employee gets no copay and they get a 90-day mail order sent to their home. The other thing that we do is called the Manufacturer's Assistance Program. So when drug manufacturers make drugs, they put aside hundreds of millions of dollars in assistance. And so what we do is we file for that assistance on behalf of the patient.
Okay, so it encompasses everything to do with prescriptions. Okay, because that purpose line says change from script sourcing pharmacy assistance program to Angel. So that's what led me to believe to Angel RX pharmacy assistance program, which led me to believe that's all it had to deal with.
It has multiple programs underneath it. It just sometimes can be kind of a lot of information. So so it actually encompasses both of the programs, the International Pharmacy and the Manufacturers Assistance Programs.
So go ahead.
One question. How did you come up with the $18,000 reduction in the RX cost to the city? How'd that come?
We took the existing claims that we processed this year, sent them to the new vendors, and they found an additional $18,000 in savings.
Okay.
So that's what I was going to talk about. I appreciate that we are constantly looking at how we can better this program because it does change so regularly, and just by opening, ourselves up to looking at these things, we have recognized an $18,000 savings just in this program that we would have saved had we just been with this particular provider. So I have no objections to this, and I like that we're continuing to be innovative and to look at options. Does any council have any more questions? Then I'll let Tom talk. All right, Tom, go ahead.
All right, so the one part of this that we haven't talked about that you need to be aware of is that Angel RX is Wendell's.
Yep, that's correct. It's my company.
So this is similar to what we did with Angel Care. Remember when we did the carve out of the cancer case? That was a company that Wendell controls also. So I want you to understand that we have a broker relationship with Wendell, and we pay him per month, per employee for that, which he does. This is going to be another contract with another company, same cost as what we're doing now, but it's in addition to a broker relationship, right? This is not a broker relationship exclusively anymore. David and I are halfway comfortable. I'll let David speak for himself, but I mean, if you want to approve this, I think it's going to be good for the city, but you're going to do it with your eyes open.
Well,
Right.
and I can't say any more clearer how important it is to say that right here, right now, or even before we got here today. Because those kinds of relationships need to be disclosed, and I had no idea about it, and I was going to ask David to at least weigh in on it, because that doesn't mean that we don't do it, but it needs to come from you that we are on the right track here. Ultimately, it saves money, I see that. But we need to know we're doing the right thing.
It is, and I reviewed all these agreements, and that was one of the key points that I raised in my comments, is that we needed to understand that there is at least a potential conflict of interest here. I don't know, I didn't see anything that makes me believe that it is a real conflict of interest in that we are saving money and that getting the same service for a lesser cost. But we need to be vigilant and always exercise our due diligence. We need to keep our eyes open, as Tom said, to make sure that nothing inappropriate happens. Our relationship with Wendell has been very good, and he's been very helpful to the city. But you need to be aware of the potential for a conflict, and we have to keep our eyes open on it.
How are we looking at these agreements, though, David? Are we looking at these annually? Are we requiring that we these come up for review every year? In other words, right now we're going to save $18,000 is what it looks like. But if in a year, if there's no trigger to look at this, and now suddenly we're paying an extra $18,000, that's where there's going to be, I think, a real issue. Are we looking at these annually?
Well, we're not looking, we're not looking at the language of the contracts annually. I think that would turn up in just the in the reports that Sarah's providing to you every month essentially.
It would come up when we're doing the renewal calculation.
Okay. And
We see it.
we need to
then.
make sure that we're vigilant, as David says, watching for that. But council, with that information, do you now have any questions?
Mayor, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, so tell me if this analogy fits. I have a surgeon who's gonna do foot surgery and says, I'd recommend this surgical center, but know that I have an interest, I'm a partial owner of that surgical center. But when I go compare the price between the hospital and the surgical center, I decide for myself, well, that's still, I save money. But he's disclosed that he's connected to that center, that he does profit. Okay, so Wendell will profit in some sort of way. So I don't want to put you on the spot here, but here's the question in a nutshell. Right now, you're saving us money. Now, say it's not you, it's just anybody, somebody else in your position. How do we know, are you the only one looking at the companies in a year or two or whatever? If there's other options out there, why would I expect you, this is gonna sound, why would I expect you to bring to me a lower price from somebody else than your company?
Maybe I can just explain why we did this, and that might help. So, Strong Side Solutions has been around since 2004. Strong Side Solutions is a consulting firm, and we decided almost a decade ago, a little over a decade ago, that there had to be some other answer than just bidding and marketing insurance and prices going up. And the mayor and I talked about this walking in. It's pretty unusual to find a consultant that's also interested in cost containment. What traditionally our industry is, whether it's insurance consultants or whether it's insurance carriers, they're very status quo. And they're very comfortable just taking commissions and kicking the can down the road and then marketing to 3 insurance carriers and giving you options and then kicking the can down the road and doing this over and over and over and over and over again. That was actually the model I was in back in 2004 when I started my career with Brown & Brown. And so as we developed capabilities, yes, we absolutely continue to look at service providers and those kind of things. And so we developed a company called Angel RX and Angel Access. Angel RX, we feel is better to do here locally because we have hired companies in Salt Lake City and companies in Boston. And what we find is that when you have to get a hold of a patient, one of your employees, and say, hey, somebody's going to call you and they need to check the phone numbers and they need to check a time to call you and they need to fill out paperwork, that we're calling HR anyway, and we're calling the employees because they don't want to talk to somebody in Boston or somebody in Salt Lake City, and we're saying, this is part of the program, it's comfortable and safe, and this is what you can benefit from it. So we're doing all the work anyway, and the only thing that's happening is the vendor's taking the phone number and the time that we schedule to have them have the call and turn and call your employee and fill out the paperwork. So we don't approve any drugs, we don't deny any drugs. We take once these, we talked about your PBM has doctors and pharmacies, and they are the ones that approve and deny and make sure the efficacy of the medications are there. All we do is facilitate U.S.-based programs and international-based programs at the benefit of your employees. And if we are successful, then we get paid a percentage of savings. And that is our incentive, is we only get something if we generate savings. There's no fee, there's no cost, there's no anything unless there are some savings to your employee and some resulting savings to the city. So, so we've been working on this and we've been watching these models for about 6 years. And we find that, Lisa Culpepper, and we're having to call your employees. Probably most of your employees know my staff because we call you and we try to work through the problems. We help you solve your bills. And we just said, if we're doing all the work, why don't we just do the rest of it too? And so that's what kind of started this. And I think it's a great program. I see it as us fulfilling our obligations here more locally on cost containment and not a conflict of interest, because it's something that we have a heart for and we're just trying to help. And so instead of trying to manage vendors, we're just doing it in our office right here in Alpharetta. And so that made sense to me as a business owner.
All right, if you save us $18,000, how much do we pay back to you?
Yeah, so your current contract with Scripps Sourcing is 25% of savings, and that's our exact contract. We mirrored the exact agreements, and we put that in place.
So if you saved us $18,000, we would give you 25% of that back. Is that what it is? So this number would actually be 3/4 of that. It would be the net savings. Okay, I don't have an objection, and I'm not registering any objection. I'm just saying that I appreciate the transparency, and in fact, if we got out of here and there had not been any transparency, I, for one, would not have been quiet about it. Okay, does any other council members have any questions?
Yes, the mayor did know I wasn't finished, but I wanted to be sure to say to you, because I know that kind of put you on the spot, but I just wanted to say if a generic person was presenting this, but I also wanted to say that based on everything I know and our dealings with you, I've been very pleased with what I've seen in the ways that you've been able to help us and bring down cost and everything, and I'm all about innovation. You know, concierge service, whatever works.
All right, is there any objection to placing this on the
Just
consent?
one more comment. David, Tom, Stephanie, Sarah, your team all had the same feelings, and they had the same prudence and diligence and same concerns. And so, you know, you need to thank your team and staff. When we brought this up, you know, Tom brought it up right. He said, this seems like a conflict of interest. And when I explained how the process works with the PBM and what we're doing, we're facilitating transactions to save money. You know, and based on our conversations with, you know, with David, it seemed like we met all those challenges. So I want you to know that they, you know, they didn't miss a beat, and from the very beginning asked me about this, and I'm trying my very best to understand and to answer their questions. So.
Okay, are there any objections?
No.
All right, thank you, Wendell. I appreciate that. We'll place this item on the consent agenda. This will be our 6th item. Let's move on to economic development. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
1, amendment to Main Street Advisory Board bylaws. This will be Ms. Janet Chumley.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So the purpose today is to amend the current bylaws for the Main Street Advisory Board. The last updated amendment to the bylaws and approved by the City Council was December 11th, 2018. The bylaws were originally adopted by the Main Street Advisory Board in September of 2015. Periodically, the Main Street Advisory Board will review the bylaws and make occasional revisions or amendments. The board recently reviewed and moved to approve the amended bylaws in the August 21st monthly board meeting. The two things they're looking to amend is the length of the terms of the board members, which is page 2, and how they can remove board members if needed on page 4. Length of the terms, and again, removal of board members. Staff is recommending that we propose to approve the amended bylaws voted on by the Main Street Advisory Board in the August 21st, 2020 meeting.
Well, summarize those two changes, though.
Yes, sir.
The length of the term.
So the amendment of the board members may serve consecutive terms if recommended by the board and approved by the City Council. That's the first change. That's on page 2.
And what was the original? Hang on just a second. What was the original piece? Or provision?
That they serve staggered terms and shall be appointed for 1, 2, or 3-year terms respectively.
Okay. What
Now
prompted this?
We have 4 board members currently that would affect, and they are wanting to stay on the board. So we wanted to review those and amend.
Okay. All right. Ms. McPherson? No. Okay. David, have you've reviewed these changes?
I have reviewed them before, I haven't reviewed them in the last couple of weeks, no. They seem to be fairly minor changes, though.
Yep. Okay, and the removal of board members. Tell me about that.
So, let me read. Officers who fail to fulfill their duties and have 3 consecutive unexcused absences from regular board meetings may be removed from office by vote of the board. So the amendment is that officers may also be removed upon motion by any board at any time. In this event, the board members moving for a motion to remove a board member and any board member seconding that motion shall state their reasons for why they want to remove them. Everybody has the right to respond to that, and then the motion shall be granted upon majority vote of the 7-member Main Street Board.
And approval
That
of City
seems
Council.
pretty.
And approval of City Council, correct.
So that still comes to the City Council for approval after?
Correct.
So the City Council already has a provision in the charter for removing board members. I just wonder if this is necessary, and if it is, would we want to be doing this for all of the citizen boards in the city? David, I'd like you to weigh in on that a little bit.
I mean, as you said, you already have the right to remove somebody.
The council,
The
they're,
council
they're
does.
trying to have that on their own board. That's the distinction here.
Well, we're just trying to, if the board feels like somebody needs to come off, then they vote yay or nay, and then we bring it back to you guys and say, are you guys good with us removing that person?
So a recommendation is what you're saying?
Correct.
I think you're just trying to decide whether or not you're gonna give them some autonomy that they
To be able to
apparently
make a
desire to have.
recommendation to the council?
Correct.
Okay, well, stated like that, I have less of a concern about it. I just don't know, I wouldn't want to see this throughout all the citizen boards. Council, does anybody have any questions?
I have-
Janet,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Montahan?
my question is, it says it's a 7-member board, and I know that currently you have 7 members on the board. However, if you have a vacancy, this 7-member language does kind of bind you to have 7 members. So you might want to reconsider how that's structured in that language and keep
Understood.
it consistent with the rest of the bylaws that yours truly drafted originally. But
Correct, you did.
All right, Ms. McPherson?
Yeah, the changes weren't that major, and with that clarification, my question actually came up with something else, because just for fun, I'm like, why not read the whole thing? Because I didn't know if I had ever done that. And usually when it comes up, whether it's historic preservation, I go ahead and read what their rules are, so I'll understand. So I have 2 questions. One's on page 7, report to city council, since it involved us. It says, the advisory board shall meet with the city council as requested to provide reports and to determine how the board may best serve the city of Villa Rica. Okay, here's the pertinent sentence. Board reports will be made at a regularly scheduled council meeting. The board must submit an annual report to the city council each year. Does that happen? Because I wasn't sure. I know we get like we used to get an economic development report. So that was my first question, is does the board submit an annual report to the city council each year? Because it is in the articles. And second question is page 8. Last sentence, section 10.2. Last sentence says the advisory board is required to submit a report of all fundraising, incoming, and spending to the Main Street manager and to the city council in a timely manner. And I didn't know if that was occurring. So that was my second question. And if it's not, it either should or the bylaws need to be changed.
We can review that. I wasn't prepared to talk about those 2 items today.
Okay.
I'm not surprised.
Let me just ask David a little bit to Councilman Montahan's point. Is there language that should be looked at with regard to mandating 7 people be present to make such a decision?
Probably. I haven't looked at this in quite some time.
Let's do
so-
this. Let's not, we'll take it up on Tuesday if David makes some changes to it, okay?
Okay.
I don't want to put this on the consent agenda tonight. Tom, you want to weigh in? Okay. All right, thank you. Do you have anything else? No. All right. Thank you, Janet. We will now move to E1, adjust amount approved for Capture Point. This is our new Parks and Recreation Director, Ms. Tracy Ivy.
Good afternoon.
Go ahead.
I think this is basically just some housekeeping work. We wanted to come back to you because we've made some revisions in the agreement and the pricing for the Capture Point Recreation software program that we're getting ready to implement. We were able to save around $4,500 with making a couple of changes just with the implementation of the program. And we wanted to just make sure you were aware of that and have our agreement signed so we can move forward. This will be our first, the city, from what I understand, the first online registration program that the Recreation Department has utilized. It's a 20-year trend, and most departments, agencies that are using this type of software are in their second or third revision or version, so we're a little bit behind the curve. But we're going to try to get caught up and have it in place by January the 1st if we can.
All right, I appreciate that. Sarah, is this the item that you and I discussed? Because if I remember correctly, council had already approved this.
Yes.
Brief us real quick on it.
Yes, so on the screen, you can see council approved back in February of 2020, $15,200. So that included a implementation fee of $9,200 or $9,250, and then an annual subscription fee of $5,950, which is what you and I looked at the other day. So I was gonna bring back an amendment for an additional amount for the financial piece so that this software can be connected to Cassell, which is our accounting piece. That was left out of the original,
Right.
document that the council approved back in February. So when I asked quote, it was actually reduced by the 4,500, and it includes the financial piece that we need. So
Very good. So
Yes.
we've already approved this, council, just so you know. They're bringing it back to us again, having been reduced by $4,500, and it is now integrated into Cassell, correct?
correct.
That was
Yes.
left out before. So
Yes.
this is largely a no-brainer. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question.
Thank you, Tracy. All right, Councilman Carter.
Get charged this amount again? It says per updated
I hope
quote.
this is it.
Wait a minute, help me with
I'm not
what
sure
you're
I
saying.
It says per updated quote. If they quote something else, we get charged.
Where do you say, oh, per the updated
It
quote
says
is
per
what it,
updated
I
quote.
understand, but it should say per the updated quote.
Oh, per the updated quote.
Okay.
It's just a typo, sir.
All right. Sound like we're gonna be
All
paying.
right, anybody else have any questions? All right, you are going to have this put on the consent agenda.
Awesome.
That should make it easy. If there are no objections, I'll add this item. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
All right, let's see where we're at. So it's going to be our 7th item on the consent agenda. Now, we have Pete Zurbanos, F1 earthwork for distribution / collection equipment storage building.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This first request is to engage a contractor to excavate up and replace approximately 2,000 cubic yards of earth for the distribution collection equipment storage building, which is located where the old West wastewater plant property is located. We did soil samples out there. They came back that they were not in good shape, and for us to be able to have a good foundation to put this equipment storage building, this earth will have to be dug out, removed, and replaced with compactable soil before we can establish the building on top of that site. There were only 2 bidders for this project. Staff is recommending the low bidder, which is International Waste Services LLC, in the amount of $89,999.99.
Okay, so let me just be clear with what this particular request is, and then I'll let council weigh. You have this property out at the Old West plant.
Correct.
You want to build a building on this,
Correct.
but the soil is bad for the construction of this building. So this particular item is to have that remediated, to have it removed, and then the new soil put back in.
Correct.
That is what the $90,000 is for.
Correct.
Okay. All right, council, do you have any questions?
Wait a minute, make sure the $90,000 doesn't include the building, it's just for taking
Just for
the
the excavation.
excavating?
Mhm, and
And then
replacing
you're
the
gonna
soil.
pay extra to buy the dirt to bring to put in it.
That's correct.
That's what the next item is.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
$90,000 to excavate. How deep are we going?
5 feet.
Wow.
So the footprint of the structure is 50 feet by 150 feet, but the recommendation was to widen that 10 foot all the way around the perimeter, so we're excavating 60 by 160, 5 feet deep. Now, if there will be determination as we dig down if it's suitable less than 5 feet, then we may have a savings there, but the recommendation based on the core samples was 5 feet.
Tell me, is there a reason, because I want to hear it, that we need to use this property, that we need to be at this location?
I know that there's a scarcity of sites for us to locate this building, and this was identified as the one location to put this facility.
You can understand that, I mean, I know you understand that that's a lot of money just to prepare a site.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're looking at literally $100,000 to prepare a site to build something on.
Right.
So I guess I'm looking for, and I suspect others on this council are looking for you to say that this site is just that precious that we need to do whatever we need to do to remediate it to build this building. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So it's adjacent to the West Plant, which is a plus, right? Because you've got people there. There are facilities already there. So the old metal building that was used for whatever back in the old West Plant days is still there. So we'll be able to use that to store all of the brass and more valuable components that Jimmy has to keep on hand to repair pipes. Once we get this building built, we're gonna store all of his equipment and vehicles in there, which will take them out of Avante. So this is the first step of emptying the Avante building for future reuse, right, and us in the city getting out of it. Since I've been here, we have moved 2 trailers onto this site, one that we bought from Ithaca Gym
Yes.
Elementary School, one that was somewhere else
Donated
on
by
the
the
site.
police, donated by the police department.
Thank you, Police Department. So there's 2 trailers out there, so we've effectively got office space, and we'll be able to store maps in one of them, which is a problem now. So that's the plan. Could we have done it someplace else? The only other land that we own is the piece in the Development Authority control, and we just sold it, right? And we got 200 grand for that. So could we have done it somewhere else? Yeah, maybe, but it's a good site for what we do, because this is Jimmy's operation. So this is water line, sewer line, repair, et cetera.
Okay. Mr. Carter?
We do own 75 acres that the city bought. Do we look at any of that as far as locating a building?
It's going to be bisected by the north loop, and right now there's not a good way to get to it. We would have had to have built a road. So you don't have water and sewer,
So you're saying it's not really accessible, is that what you're telling me?
Well, I mean, we could have done it, but that would have been a bill from scratch right there. But this process that we're talking about, was a significant part of the cost of the new West Plant. We did the same thing. I wasn't here, but I've read about it, so I know we did. This is like literally next door to the West Plant, so this same unsuitable soil problem was a problem there. We did the same thing in Fullerville Trailhead. Next to the soccer fields, there's a creek that bisects the two, and that whole area in there was unsuitable soil. So we've done this a couple times.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't make it feel any better.
No.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
let me make sure I understand. Where we're locating this is where the old West Plant used to be, that area and that, okay.
Okay.
This building was approved back in January.
Yes.
9 months later, we still don't have a building, and we're just now finding out the soil's no good?
Yes.
Wow.
And one thing that complicates this is the fact that back in the day, when they raised the old West Plant, they buried a lot of the existing structures on that site. I didn't know that until late, that compromises some of the soil in the footprint as well.
In this footprint?
Yes.
Well, it appears like this, if the west plant had to have soil remediation, and now this building next to it has to have soil, anything we do out there is gonna have to have soil remediation.
I would say that's correct.
Right.
So we should figure that into the cost. I don't know that we would have approved this building if we knew it was gonna be 238,000 instead of the 138,000 we approved for the building.
Okay. So Tom, this is still staff's recommendation to approve
Right.
this. This is the best we can do. The location matters for Jimmy and his folks and what our longer-term plans are.
And using the buildings that are already out there, and the road, and the water and the sewer line, and the electrics, all already out there.
All right, I mean, it's a part of what feels to me that we have to do, but at some point, we have got to get past some of these. Where we've located that west plant is what has led to this. I mean, that's it, period. And now it looks like we're trying to make the best of the situation. Danny?
Okay. Another question, you had two bidders. They had to go look at the site, correct?
Correct.
So who discovered that the soil was not good? I mean, all of a sudden we found out the soil's no good.
Right, well, when it came to my attention, we went ahead and had a company come out and do core samples of the site where the pad's supposed to be located. And based on the cores that came back, indicated that we needed to remediate that location.
So the people that did the bid for the building assumed that they had a good
No,
foundation.
this was separate. This was from the engineering firm. We went ahead and had someone go out there and do the core samples at that point.
Can you talk just a little bit about either one, how we went from approving the building 9 months ago to just now getting to the need to find out about the footing for the building? In other words, why wouldn't we have looked at that really soon after it was approved?
Well, in hindsight, I should have looked at it ahead of time. I did not realize the extent of what the burial might have been, and should have done the core samples before we brought the building to you.
Okay. Well, if we approve the building back in February, is that what it was?
January
Okay,
28th.
in January. It just seems like you would have been moving forward. And I just am trying to get an idea here, because I think the council has questions. Why wouldn't we already start looking at building the building in March or April or May? Is it because of COVID? Is
Some of that, yes,
Well, I mean,
very much so.
I think that's a question, so that's part of it. It's
Yes,
just
it
part of
is.
how 2020 has gone. All right, council, do you have any other questions?
Just clarification, really. Sorry, just clarification. Doesn't this have to do with everybody being on top of one another over in the Avante building and it being too crowded in there and us trying to get the equipment and part of the,
That will
Water-
be a benefit, but the reason to empty Avante is to reuse it,
to ultimately get everybody out of there?
right?
Okay,
This
so
will be
the
the
long
first step.
term, okay.
All right, anybody else? All right, if there is no objection, I'm gonna place this on the consent agenda. All right, that'll be
I won't be
C8.
here to vote, so I can't object.
Are you going to include the next one with it?
All right, yeah, so, I mean, the next one goes hand in hand with it, so it does no good to approve this one without the next one, but go ahead. F2, compatible soil for distribution, collection, equipment, storage building.
Okay, this is a request to purchase approximately 2,000 cubic yards of compactable soil to put back in, once the excavation's done and the bad soil is removed, to put in good compactable soil. Staff recommends purchasing the 2,000 cubic yards of compactable soil at $5 per cubic yard from Jeff Matthews in an amount not to exceed $10,000.
All right, tell me how you came up with the seller. Did you, he got just the best soil that there is? Or did you bid it, or did you just need this soil from him?
It's close.
Close, okay,
Yeah, some of it's behind Walmart, some of it's at the intersection of 61 and 78 Van Wert and 78 across from First Baptist.
Does this include moving the soil, or is this just the purchase of the soil?
Just the purchase.
All right, who's gonna move it?
The contractor that's awarded the excavation, they're gonna be hauling the spoils, and then they'll be,
So there's no additional cost to the city with regard to this soil than the purchase of the 10,000, the,
correct.
Okay,
They'll
2,000
load the
cubic feet.
trucks on a return truck.
all right, council, anybody have any questions? If there are no questions, I'm gonna place this item on the consent agenda. It'll be C9, consent 9. If there are no objections, is what I meant to say. All right, thank you, Pete.
Thank you.
All right, next up, police. Michael Mansour. He wants to sell some stuff. And while he's making his way up here, because you know how he does the slow walk, it's kind of like the catwalk, today is his birthday. So we want to wish the chief a happy birthday. Let me check my notes here. Yes, he is 68.
68?
Excuse me, sir, 58.
Oh, 58, yeah. He looks like
Happy
he walks.
birthday.
Thank you so much.
Libras, I think, are special folks.
They
so
are, no
I'll
question.
throw that out there for
No
you.
question. Yes,
All right,
sir.
go ahead.
So, my cousin called me and sang happy birthday to me in 5 languages.
Oh,
That's pretty impressive.
That
I
is
have to admit.
impressive.
I've never had that done. So what this is items that have been collected either through cases or people found or abandoned or whatever, and we're just asking to be able to sell them on Gov Deals like we do with other stuff, and Nick helps us a lot do that and get it lotted up and sell it on there, and that's about it. Pretty
Yeah,
simple.
sounds exciting.
I thought
Council,
so.
any questions?
Yeah, I'm curious about how much will all this stuff bring? $1, $2, what?
$18.50, sir.
1850.
I really don't know.
I like
I was wondering how you knew the
Yeah.
now, that pair of
We're
white
not
sneakers.
selling on West Georgia Barn Finds. We're
How
selling
much do you
this
get
on
for a pair of
Gov
white
Deals.
sneakers,
Yeah.
Chief?
You'd be surprised. Some of this
He's
stuff
gonna
goes
buy it
pretty
for
big.
$18.50 when it goes on Gov Deals and then resell it through West Georgia.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
right. I'll buy it, then no.
Sounds like a conflict there,
I
David.
think
Are you
so.
looking at that?
Yeah.
Sometime there's some
All right,
interesting
if
items.
there
but
are
it's
no
pretty boring.
objections,
They did have a public auction in Douglasville this weekend, but it was like 500 people there, so I didn't make it to it. But this is a lot easier for us, especially on small items like that. They had a bunch of cars and equipment. We don't have a lot of that, so.
Sounds like a consent.
all right, you're on the consent agenda. C10. Thank you, sir. All right. And now, tab H, Finance. Ms. Sarah Andrews, she's gonna bring 2020 budget amendments. Feels like we get one every month.
Yes, but thankfully this is just one. So, because of COVID, we lost our inmate crews, and so we've had temporary employees since then, which I brought y'all a budget amendment months ago and used some of that budgeted fund for the inmate crews, and we moved it to this line item to help cover this expense, and we used part of it to cover the extra sanitation supplies and stuff we had purchased. Anyway, we've run way out of money for this line item, so this is asking for a budget amendment of $60,000 to this temporary employee line item. And I'm offsetting it by increasing the revenue line item for the CARES Act funding. So that wasn't a budgeted item. We have received that money. And so increasing the expense for $60,000, but also increasing the revenue for $60,000.
All right, council, any questions?
Yes. The budget amendment was easy. This is really my question. How much did we get in CARES? In other words, it seemed like to me initially, my understanding was pretty much they were going to cover things that weren't budgeted for us, you know, extra cleaning supplies and PPE, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And I was almost surprised when I saw this. So what did we, you know, overall, what did we get in CARES?
So in the end, the Department of Treasury allowed public safety employees that were responding to the public health emergency. And so they said, you didn't budget for your employees to be responding to COVID, so that's how they justified it. So basically, all of our patrol officers from, I think it was March 1st to August 31st. We pulled their payroll and we submitted that as justification for our CARES Act money. So we ended up receiving $840,000.
So what the councilwoman is referring to is initially, we knew we would have to justify the maximum amount that we could get, which was some $840 or $850,000. We thought we might not be able to get justification for, but only a fraction of that, maybe 25% or 30%. But they widened the flexibility for that program, and we were able to justify all of it. So we received the entire amount as opposed to just the fraction that we initially were going to receive.
So even for something that we would have originally been paying?
Yes,
the
ma'am. Don't
regular
tell
hours?
anybody.
Well, only because I'd like to see, you know, we had losses, right? We had losses. I'd kind of like to see what were our losses compared to what we came back and what that difference is.
Sure. And our biggest losses were in revenue, recreation, Pine
Right.
Mountain. And those, they said specifically, they were not going to pay us
Those
for
would not
that.
have been covered.
So when they, so that's why in the beginning I thought, well, we're not gonna be able to cover a lot of that. The true loss for us was revenue. You know, we bought some PPE, not a huge amount. We bought some sanitation supplies, lots of gloves and masks and things, but that wasn't gonna be $840,000. It wasn't even gonna be $140,000. And some of the specific payroll items, like we had 80 hours of COVID pay we had to give to every employee, but they didn't want us to submit that. So initially, I didn't think we were going to be able to cover all that. But like I said, the Department of Treasury came back and said you can submit your patrol officers because they were responding and mitigating the public health emergency.
So in the end, I don't know about everybody else, would like to see the difference of what we considered our losses were and what we were able to get back from
Okay.
CARES. Because that was part of the reason for the justification on raising taxes was the fact that we had losses. I'd just like to see what the difference was. We had lost revenue.
All right, any questions on this budget
Yeah, I
amendment?
got one question.
Yes, sir.
You say we got 840,000 and we're spending 60,000. How much have we spent so far out of the 840?
Well, technically, we spent all of it. It was part of
Uh-huh.
that patrol officer.
So we're digging deep in the hole here.
No, it was a reimbursement for costs that we had already spent, which was the patrol officers. It was not a budgeted item. So I have $840,000 sitting on the books of additional revenue that wasn't budgeted. So I have to offset this expense with a revenue, and that is an additional revenue that hadn't been budgeted yet. So that's how, for bookkeeping purposes, $780,000.
Yes, 780.
No, I took the inmate budget, the 50,000 for inmates, and I moved 40,000 of it to the seasonal employee or the temporary employee line, and 10,000 of it to PP&E.
I did think there was a smaller piece, though, that had come out of that, but I'll have
I
to
did
go back
too.
and remember it, because there was something. It may be slipping your mind, but there is something. There is still a considerable amount left. Yes, sir.
The
Go ahead.
other thing to point out is this is not finished, right? The circumstance that's causing this,
Right, the inmate crew.
there are no inmates on the horizon from either source. In fact, Carroll County Jail has just recently gone back to their full COVID status. Right, so we're getting no one from either source. So this is, and I don't know, how many guys do we have? 5?
I thought it was more than
Is
that.
it 6? Whatever. We had 12 inmates that we've replaced with, half as many temps, but that inmate thing was a real deal.
Yeah.
Even though they weren't as productive as these guys, 12 warm bodies is still, that's a lot of work.
Right,
that we
'cause
were getting done.
I would
so-
point out that
And that's just the Carroll side, not the Douglas
the
side.
productivity that we're getting out of the temporary workers.
It's been really good.
Right.
But by losing the Douglas crew, they were 100% dedicated to Pine Mountain, which has really hurt the progress that we've made. Although we've made progress, we lost that labor pool, so this is gonna come back. I mean, because what'd we budget for this?
120 or so.
Yeah. We'll be
One-
back.
One other question, is this all we're gonna get, say 140, is that it? We-
840?
Yeah,
Yes, at this point.
we can't apply for more?
It was a 30% initially and a 70% initially. We've received both pieces.
Unless there is a new stimulus that comes through Congress.
Right.
We're done with the one that already. Okay, if there are no objections, I'm gonna place this item on the consent agenda as well. All right. Public amendments, budget amendments, yeah. Okay, all right, we have reached the end of the agenda, so let me open up here to see if there are any public comments. All right, seeing no public comments, I'll close the public comment portion of the meeting, and then let's build our consent. Yes, sir.
Council comment? It's not on there.
Let me get you at the end.
Okay.
Let me first build this consent agenda, and then I'll see if anybody on the council wants to say anything. All right, here's what I've got. I guess I've made Tom laugh about something. That's fine. All right. Y'all help me. Item 1 on the consent agenda will be B8, Dallas Road abandonment and sale. Item 2 on the consent agenda will be B9, temporary road closure request for Walton Communities. Item 3 on the consent agenda will be item C1, change in payroll provider. Item 4 on the consent agenda will be C2, 2021 benefit premiums. Consent item number 5 will be C4, health benefit changes. Consent number 6 will be C5, change in pharmacy assistance program. Item 7 on the consent agenda will be item E1, adjust amount approved for Capture Point. Item 8 on the consent agenda will be F1, earthwork for distribution, collection, equipment, storage building. Item 9 on the consent agenda will be F2, compactable soil for distribution, collection, equipment, storage building. Item 10 on the consent agenda will be G1, items for auction. And item number 11 on the consent agenda will be H1, 2020 budget amendments. Does anybody see anything differently? All right, hearing no changes to that, I will now ask if any council members have any comments.
I would like to once again thank Sticks Bar and Grill and the Velcro Pygmies for hosting a fundraiser for the Villa Rica Police Department Active Shooter Vest Fund. It was a great time out there. There's a great large number of people showed up. Of course, the Velcro Pygmies were wonderful, just like they always are. So thanks again to Sticks Bar and Grill and the Velcro Pygmies. The second thing I'd like to do is remind everybody, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so you should look for organization you'd like to support.
Excellent. Those are 2 great points. Do we happen to have any numbers from that yet? So I've been waiting to get the actual numbers for that Sticks effort on those vests, and I haven't gotten those yet, but I appreciate how that event was handled. I think they did a great job there. I was pleasantly surprised because the city was not as involved as we generally would be for something that we were sponsoring, but I was there, and I think that thing went off very well, and I appreciate everybody for their participation in that, and the police department, they had a great showing out there as well, and I would like to know how much money we raised for that. Any other council members?
Yeah, we need to point out that there's one more event coming up tomorrow for the chief at the mill, 12:30 to 2 o'clock, Faith in Blue.
Okay, and I do plan to be there. Anybody else have anything? All right, Mr. Mecklin, do you have anything? Mr. Barber, ladies, do y'all have anything? All right, with that, if there's nothing else, I will adjourn.